Hash the silent clock, 07:00 p.m., June 8, 2001, Old Mill Tower. On the evening of June 8, 2001, the town of Whitmore Falls prepared for something it had long awaited. The Old Mill Tower, a landmark that had dominated the skyline for 137 years, was to reopen after a meticulous restoration. For 3 decades, the structure had sat abandoned, its clock frozen at 7 o'clock since a winter storm in 1971 had knocked out the mechanism. But on this June evening, the hands would move again. The celebration would bring hundreds of residents to the grassy hillside below. What none of them knew was that somewhere within those ancient brick walls, a woman was about to vanish without a trace, leaving behind only questions that would haunt this small community for years to come. The Old Mill Tower stands at the edge of what was once the Whitmore Falls Industrial District. Built in 1864 by mill owner Edwin Whitmore, the structure originally served as a clock tower for the textile factory below. At 92 feet tall, it was constructed from local red brick, with 4 arched windows facing the cardinal directions. A wrought iron spiral staircase, narrow and steep, winds upward to a viewing platform at the top. By 2001, the factory had long since crumbled, but the tower remained, a silent sentinel overlooking the river where salmon once ran and workers once walked to their shifts. Margaret Ellen CRS, 66 years old at the time of her disappearance, had lived in Whitmore Falls her entire life. She worked as the town archivist, a position she had held for 23 years. Margaret was known for her meticulous nature, her thick glasses, and her deep commitment to preserving the town's history. She had been instrumental in the campaign to restore the Old Mill Tower, spending countless hours researching its original construction and lobbying the town council for preservation funds. Friends described her as private but warm, a woman who remembered every name in town and every story attached to each family. She lived alone in a small house on Maple Street, 3 blocks from the tower, and was last seen leaving her home at approximately 5:45 that evening, dressed in her best blue dress, carrying a small handbag. The celebration began at 7 o'clock as planned. Mayor David Chen cut the ribbon beside the newly repaired clock face, and the mechanism whirred to life for the first time in 30 years. The crowd applauded as the hands moved, reaching 7:15, then 7:30. Margaret Ellen CRS was seen by several witnesses near the base of the tower shortly before 7, speaking with another attendee, though no one would later remember the specifics of their conversation. At 7:22, a local photographer captured a photograph of the crowd looking upward at the illuminated clock face. In that photograph, taken from the south side of the hill, a figure can be seen in one of the tower's upper windows. The image would become central to the investigation. When Margaret's sister, Patricia Ellen CRS, arrived at the celebration at 8 o'clock, she looked for her but could not find her. She assumed Margaret had gone home early, as the archivist often did from large events, preferring quieter surroundings. But when Patricia called Margaret's house at 9:30 and received no answer, she became concerned. By 10 o'clock, she had contacted the Whitmore Falls Police Department. Officers conducted a preliminary search of the area, but found no sign of Margaret Ellen CRS. Her handbag, containing her wallet, reading glasses, and a small notepad, was never recovered. The investigation began in earnest the following morning. Detective Samuel Reyes, a 20-year veteran of the state police who had worked cases across the region, was assigned to lead the search. He arrived at the tower at 6 a.m. on June 9, the morning mist still clinging to the grass. The structure had been sealed overnight, and initial forensic teams were already processing the interior. The spiral staircase showed signs of recent use. Dust on the steps had been disturbed, and on the 17th step from the bottom, investigators found a small piece of blue fabric caught on the iron railing. It would later be confirmed as matching the material of Margaret Ellen CRS's dress. The tower's interior revealed little else. The viewing platform at the top, accessible through a locked door that investigators found ajar, offered 360 degrees of view. The ground below, a rocky incline leading down to the river, showed no signs of disturbance. Bloodhounds brought to the scene tracked Margaret's scent from the base of the tower to the riverbank before losing the trail in the water. Detective Reyes stood on that bank that first morning, looking at the current, wondering what secrets it might hold. Witnesses provided fragmentary accounts. Harold Simmons, 74, a retired factory worker who had known Margaret through the Historical Society, told investigators he had seen her at the base of the tower around 7 o'clock. He remembered she seemed distracted, frequently looking toward the upper windows as though expecting someone. When asked if he had spoken with her, Simmons said he had called out a greeting, but she appeared not to hear him, already moving toward the tower's entrance. His account placed Margaret inside the structure before 7:15, the time the photographer's image was taken. That photograph, captured by Amelia Vance, 31, a freelance photographer hired by the town to document the event, became the most examined piece of evidence. Enlarged and enhanced, the figure in the window appears to be a woman in a light-colored dress, standing at the eastern window. The image was taken at 7:22. Margaret Ellen CRS was officially reported missing at 10 p.m. that night. The window figure, whatever her identity, had been visible for approximately 1 hour after Margaret was last seen alive. Forensic analysis of the photograph proved inconclusive. The figure is partially obscured by the glass, and the image resolution insufficient for positive identification. The woman's silhouette matches Margaret's general height and build, but investigators could not rule out that it might be someone else entirely. Detective Reyes noted in his report that the figure appeared to be standing perfectly still, an observation that would take on deeper significance as the investigation continued. The investigation expanded to include Margaret's personal life, though those who knew her struggled to identify any enemies or troubled relationships. She had no romantic partners at the time of her disappearance. Her work at the archives was described as devoted and uncompromised. Financial records showed no debts or irregularities. Her sister, Patricia, told investigators that Margaret had been excited about the tower's reopening, having worked toward it for years. There was no indication she intended to harm herself, no history of mental health concerns, no note left behind. In every measurable way, Margaret Ellen CRS appeared to be a woman in good standing, looking forward to a celebration of her life's work. The tower itself became the focus of intense scrutiny. The restoration company, Whitmore Construction Partners, had completed work only 2 days before the event. Their records showed all doors had been locked and keys collected. The lock on the viewing platform door, however, had been found ajar on the night of June 8th. A key was never officially assigned to that door, though 3 copies existed according to company records. Only one could be accounted for. The other 2 remained missing. Detectives interviewed the restoration workers. 2 men, Thomas Whitmore, no relation to the original family, and David Kramer, had been the last to work inside the tower. Both provided alibis for the evening of June 8th. Both passed polygraph examinations. Neither had seen Margaret Ellen CRS on the property. Their employment records showed no connection to the archivist, no history of conflict, no apparent motive. Yet the forensic evidence, the disturbed dust, the fabric caught on the railing, pointed to someone having been inside, someone other than the workers. 6 weeks after Margaret's disappearance, the investigation took an unexpected turn. A kayaker on the river, 3 miles downstream, discovered a woman's watch caught in a debris pile along the bank. The time had stopped at 7:43. It was positively identified as Margaret Ellen CRS's watch, a gift from her father, worn every day for decades. The watch had been in working condition the morning of June 8th. Its discovery raised new questions. Had Margaret been in the river? Had she fallen or been pushed? And if so, why was her body never found in the weeks of searching that followed? The river at that point runs swift and cold, fed by mountain snowmelt even in early summer. Detective Reyes explained that the current could have carried a body significant distances, depositing it in debris traps or wedging it beneath submerged rocks. But the search continued for months. Dive teams worked the river in sections. Cadaver dogs were brought in. Nothing else was recovered. No body, no handbag, no conclusive evidence of what had occurred inside the old mill tower on that June evening. The case remains open. Margaret Ellen's CRS was never found. Her sister maintains a small memorial at the base of the tower, a simple stone marker with her name and the words "Devoted Daughter of Whitmore Falls." The clock, once silent for 30 years, continues to mark the hours, its mechanism wound and maintained by the town. Every evening at 7 o'clock, it chimes, the sound carrying across the valley where Margaret spent her entire life. The photograph still exists, filed among the case documents, the figure in the window a frozen mystery. Detective Reyes, now retired, still speaks about the case when asked. He will tell you that some details trouble him, certain inconsistencies in witness statements that were never fully resolved, certain evidence that pointed in directions the investigation could not follow. He will tell you that in all his years of service, this was the case that stayed with him, not for what happened, but for what remained unknown. The tower stands as it always has, brick and iron and glass, holding its secrets close. The clock hands move forward, measuring time that cannot be recovered. And in the archives of Whitmore Falls, Margaret Ellen's CRS's files remain exactly as she left them, meticulously organized, waiting for a researcher who may never come. The question that haunts this small town, the question that has no answer, is not what happened to the clock that night. The question is what happened to Margaret Ellen's CRS, a woman who walked into history on the evening of June 8, 2001, and never walked out.